Your life right now, as you know it, is more than likely nothing more than one form of escapism to another. And I'm not just talking about the video games. I'm not just talking about when, you're doom scrolling. I'm talking about the relationships that you have. I'm talking about the food that you're eating. I'm talking about the quote unquote education that you are downloading into your psyche. I'm talking about the quote unquote information that you're consuming. I'm talking about the work that you're indulging yourself with. It is nothing more than a multitude of forms of escapism. We have learned how to run from our lives, and more in this generation, how to vicariously live through others' lives. There are those who watch me as a form of escapism. I understand this. It's not the intention as to which I create this content, but I am well aware that there are those who are supposed to be doing exactly what I'm doing, but instead will find a form of escapism. They will find a somebody else to live vicariously through. We always wondered about the Kardashians. How on earth did they become somebody in our society? How crazy do we have to be as a society? And the answer is simple. Those who watch the Kardashians, whether you love them or hate them, were living vicariously. Now, if you don't know what that word vicarious means, it doesn't mean curious vilely. No, it's not about a curiosity. It's about living through somebody. That's what that means, right? We are living through the celebrities that we worship. We're living through the content creators that are now becoming the new version of celebrities. We're living through the Kardashians or any version of the Kardashians. Instead of creating the life of our dreams, what we have created is a world in which we can escape. Instead of the relationship that we truly desire, we create relationships where we can just continue to escape. Now, first and foremost, what is it that we're escaping from? Glad you asked. Beautiful question. Beautiful question. It's the most beautiful question that's ever been asked. Trump voice. We're escaping the dark aspects or the shadow aspects of ourselves. Now, I'm not even going to say dark. They're just simply shadow. The aspects of ourselves that have been hidden away, which is those unresolved aspects of us, unresolved traumas, those stories that we continue to tell ourselves, the way in which we identify, the feelings of inadequacy, feelings of undeservedness, unworthiness, etc. That's the thing we're actually escaping. Now, what we do not realize is that the only way for us to create the life that we desire is for us to shine a light in those shadowy places. It's the only way. That's why I preach healing so much. It's the only way to the things that you truly desire in life. You don't even know what you truly want, what is genuinely, authentically you, because you have not yet met yourself. I realized this just a couple of years back when I said, wait a minute, I actually don't know who I am. I don't know what I am really into. I don't know what makes me come alive. I may have experienced those things, but I oftentimes rejected them and instead picked things up that made me feel quote unquote safe, the things that felt familiar, the things in which I was going to get the most admiration or the most affirmation from others, what was going to get me validated, what was going to get me attention. Those are the things I often gave myself to. The things that were not going to ruffle people's feathers and make them feel uncomfortable. I would not dare put myself out in the way I now am. I was afraid that I would make others feel some type of way about my own shine. If I was to go out there and be a somebody, God forbid, people would not like me anymore. And so I hid from my true identity. And the reason I did so is, well, it was all unconscious. We're doing this mostly at an unconscious or a subconscious level, right? These are the aspects that are buried, and we bury them. It's not like they've been buried from us and hidden from us by, some sort of external entity. We're the ones who do this from the earliest stages of life, when we realize that the authentic aspects of who we are, when they are rejected within our households. So, for example, if who you are, let's say you're loud and you're vivacious and you got a whole lot of life and energy in you, and your household or your family structure is one that is the opposite, and so they always look to suppress your energy, you're going to find a way to fit into the family, so you're going to suppress yourself. The school system or education system is masterful at this, right? Sit down and shut up and listen. When most of those kids are looking to express themselves physically. Most of us as human beings are wired in that way. Very few of, or very little of the collective of the population is the sit down and impute information in that sort of way. Ironically enough, I'm actually one of those, right? I'm an auditory learner. I am kinesthetic as much as anything, but number one is auditory. But I know it's a small percentage of people who learn in that way. But the point being, we find ourselves creating forms of escapism through any means necessary, right? Because we look at the junkie on the street, we look at the dope fiend or whoever it may be, and we think, wow, look at that person. They're in a terrible situation. Oh, they're really, they need to deal with their stuff. The only difference between them and you is the fact that theirs is externally expressed. It's like somebody on the street talking to themselves, right? They're talking out loud, having a whole ass argument. You think to yourself, that person is cuckoo. But look at you. The conversation you're having internally is the very same. And if we were to project that conversation outwardly, you probably would be in some type of house. I'll just say that. A special kind of house where they have special kind of jackets that wrap your arms all the way across your body. We have created a life of escapism, and it is keeping us from the life that we desire. And the thing that we are escaping is the very thing we need to go through and grow through in order for us to create that life. You have to deal with those stories. You have to face them at some point. And again, I understand the fear is if I begin to, then the thing I fear most is going to happen, which is I'm going to be rejected. That was the big thing for me, right? I was an actor from as early as 2 years old, a literal actor. I was in my first commercial at that time. They saw I had some sort of gifting for it. And so for the next 10 years of my life, I was acting. And I was extremely good at it. I was winning awards. I was, getting accolades, things of that nature. Not because I'm so impressive, but because I was practicing every single day at home. I was always acting. I was trying to be the perfect child and trying to be the perfect Christian little boy who did all the perfect things that, Lord Jesus wanted him to do. I was acting and acting and acting and hiding away my true feelings and hiding away the authenticity within myself. I was the questioning mind, but I suppressed my ability to question anything because it was adverse to my surroundings. And so I hid that part of me. And it became something I was ashamed of. And as my life unfolded from a place of inauthenticity, I became this people pleaser. I was somebody who lived for the opinions of others. I lived for somebody to give me a good opinion, right? It's the irony. It's like my gifting is very much communication. But on the dark side of it, or on the unhealthy side of it, it was simply to get people to like me. So I would say what you wanted me to say in order for you to like me. I would pander to you, even though it was the least authentic thing for me. It's not in my nature one iota. The Aquarian is the opposite. We're spinning backwards as Uranus. You know what I mean? Like, I was not that person at all, but yet I constructed that persona for a survival purpose. And so the only way I could cope was the dope. Literally, at 14 years old until I was 19, I was hooked on dope. And the reason I left that lifestyle is because I found another identity that I could hide in. I found another category. I found myself back into quasi-spirituality. Then I ran back to religion. I was looking for a sense of identity, something to hide behind, something that could mask the shame that I was afraid to face. And the deepest irony to me was once I finally felt I was forced, I was at rock bottom emotionally. And I couldn't regulate these, these emotions were coming up and I could do nothing about them. And I had to face them. And when it came to that point, I started realizing that, bro, this is freedom. When I let myself, cry, and it's not about just crying or, oh, I'm feeling sad today. It's deeper than that. I'm talking about the roots of your life. I'm talking about the stories that you were told and that you told yourself and you internalized about not being worthy or deserving of love, not being enough. And so, you go through life trying to be enough. I'm talking about the core stories, really dealing with those and facing those and being honest about those. And that we've created a life of escapism. And so we project those hidden emotions. We escape our lives through the things that we eat, through the things that we watch, through the things that we do, through the conversations or the people that we relate to and have relationship with. We escape through one another. We escape through this day and age. The devices have become number one. The average person, they said, last time I heard, spends upwards to 6 hours a day of screen time. That's escaping. That's not a natural tendency for us. We're looking for a new means to escape our own lives as opposed to creating it, as opposed to living in and on purpose, as opposed to doing the thing that we're called to do. We don't believe we're deserving of it. We don't believe we're deserving of abundance and prosperity. We've been told that we're not worthy, we're not adequate. Then we're taught ourselves that. And so instead, we become jealous and envious of those who are living the lives that we desire. We admire them, we put them on pedestals, we deify them, making them gods, and we also despise them at the very same time. Because we have not recognized ourselves in that equation. We've not recognized that we, within ourselves, have the very same qualities. We ourselves are deserving of that. But when we cannot acknowledge that truth because we're not willing to go deep and deal with that stuff. Again, it's, I use the analogy of the movie Sandlot. If you haven't watched it before, I'm about to give a major spoiler alert. It's these kids, it's American summertime. They're playing baseball, hit a ball over this fence of a house of this supposed mean old man who has this like child eating dog, right? And so they're all terrified to go over the fence and to get the ball. And the entire movie is premised around them basically getting the courage, or one of the kids getting the courage to jump over the fence. And, long story longer is the kid ends up realizing that this dog is not only not a child-eating dog, but is actually the friendliest, big old Great Dane-looking dog in the world. And the old man is James Earl Jones, not as Darth Vader, but as James Earl Jones, just the sweetest old man with the voice that would shake the earth, right? That's what he realizes. And they find a friend in this man. They find a friend in the dog. All the kids come over. They have lemonade. And, the rest is history, in essence. I don't know if the lemonade part is true, but I just do remember that essentially he faced his fear, realized that on the other side was actually something positive. He got a new buddy in this dog. And so that's how most of us are living. We're afraid of the thing that we're so we're escaping the very thing that if we faced it, would bring us to a place of freedom. It's like if you were on a plantation and there was a fence, and on the other side of that fence was freedom, but you were terrified of that fence. You were terrified of the other side of that fence. You're literally terrified of freedom. That's the thing that you're afraid of. And to be fair, there's an accurate logical assumption that you could make from being terrified of the other side because you've never been there. You don't know what it's like to live on the other side. You don't know what it's like to live a life where you're no longer self-deprecating, where you no longer feel unworthy. What's it like to live a life, God forbid, where I actually do love myself? What is it like to live a life where I actually do believe that I'm worthy and adequate, that I don't have to show up in certain ways? I remember before I met my soulmate, before I met Bae, I couldn't even fathom. It's like, how would I even show up in a relationship if I don't have to be something for her? Like I don't have to, do something or be the most impressive in the room or whatever it is I have to put on. Like, what do I even do? There was a discomfort about even that idea. And it wasn't until I accepted that by going through and doing the work, doing the shadow work, which, by the way, I have an entire video I did way back in the day, which is a beginner's guide to shadow work, because that's going to be a question. How do I do it then? How do I do it then? We all have our own path, and I can't tell you step by step because it's your journey, but I can tell you that you can't go any other way. Like the fence is the way to freedom. You understand me? The fence is the only way. Oh man, I just wish I could. I wish my life's not turning out. And so we become blamers. We become complainers. We become powerless, helpless, self-perpetuated victimhood becomes the way in which we function through life. And that's a direct result of us simply not facing the thing that is calling to us. It is negative emotions are nothing more than an indicator. All emotions are an indicator of something deeper that's going on. So your negative emotions are indicating something to you, right? In the words of Dr. Gabor Mate, like anger is an indicator of somebody encroaching onto your personhood, onto your environment. Or as an Abraham Hicks would say, anger is essentially an expression of going from a place of powerlessness into power, right? Because most of us are living in deep pression. We're deeply pressing our emotional state. And so we're in depression. And then when we elevate our emotions, we oftentimes get into anger, into retaliation. And that anger is an energy. But we have learned for many of us that anger is terrible. It's bad. Do not, if you feel anger, you're bad. Me, raised in a fundamentalist Christian household, to be angry is to be given to the devil. So, it's better off you just go back into depression. You're better off just suffering in that deep pressing of your true emotional impulses, or not impulses, but emotional state. Right? I'm not saying you go and knock somebody's teeth out. That's not the expression. I'm talking about a healthy expression of that energy, which is to recognize what it is and that it's sending you a signal. It's trying to tell you something. You feel angry about a situation because you want to get out of that situation, or you're trying to get into it. You're trying to mobilize yourself into action. And when you do not listen to that voice, it will continue to call you. It may become more and more subtle, but it's going to manifest itself and project itself. That's why some of the people who seem the most tee-hee, ha-ha, cheery, they all of a sudden have these big blow-up moments. You know what I mean? They're enraged. They're furious. Like out of nowhere, they explode because they're not dealing with it on a moment-to-moment basis. They're not being authentic to how they're actually feeling. And so they suppress it. Oftentimes that manifests itself as chronic disease and chronic ailments. And so they find themselves sometimes in a hospital bed. There's a book that Dr. Gabor Mate was talking about in a video I did with him and Theo Vaughn. The most unseemingly collab of all time, but it was a beautiful thing. And it's called The Regrets of Dying People, right? And in this book, this woman who worked in palliative care for a long time in Australia, I believe, she was talking about like the number one regret of all people in palliative care. The number one regret is I wish I'd lived more authentically. And the number 3 is I wish I had expressed my emotions in a real way, which really are one and the same. I wish I had just been true to myself. And the only way to be true to yourself is to connect to all aspects of yourself. It's the only way to create the life you want. We talk about manifestation all day till we're blue in the face, right? I'm a manifest. But if you do not deal with the very thing that's in the way, like your life, everything wants to unfold for you, right? It's like peace. Peace is a natural state of being. It's only that there are things in the way of peace. And the things in the way of peace are the things that we have placed in the way of peace. When we get rid of those aspects, those stories, those ideas and concepts, peace is naturally occurring in our lives. The things we manifest in our life, this may sound crazy, but they're naturally going to occur. We will naturally do the things in order to align ourselves. I naturally create these videos. I wake up with a desire. I'm on fire to create this content. I'm on fire to make this music. I'm on fire to create. I'm ready, but it's only because I dealt with the things in the way. I got rid of the garbage in the way. I don't have to motivate myself. I don't have to slap myself 10 times in the face and I don't have to do any of that. I don't have to plunge myself in an ice bath. If you want to do that, do that. Slap yourself silly and jump in ice baths. But when I got rid of what was in the way, when I got rid of the stories that I've been telling myself for decades, and I truly resolved the inner conflicts, those lies that I told myself, the identity, the false identity I bought into, the powerlessness, the self-perpetuated victimhood, and I realized that I truly have the power to change my life circumstances and I'm deserving of it. When I started to shift that consciousness, and not on a surface level, it's not just, change my thought. No, you got to deal with the reason why you're not having that thought originally anyway. What is the thought that's in the way? Why is that thought in the way? Because you have an underlying belief system, a story you have bought into about yourself, a way in which you perceive yourself that is dictating your life circumstances. And until you jump over that fence, you will never be free.
I used to be afraid of the dark, place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. taken. A 365, that's